Inwood, New York City. Welcome to Inwood Art Works On Air. It's where you meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes who make their home in what we affectionately call upstate Manhattan. I'm your host, Aaron Sims, and today we welcome filmmaker Keena Gonzalez. Keena moved from Hollywood to New York City in 2000 to pursue her work as a photographer. In 2008, she earned her BFA from the School of Visual Arts, where she was mentored by singer-songwriter Anohi and interned for the world-renowned photographer Annie Leibovitz. Since graduating, Keena has worked closely with the artist collective Openings and has had her photographs exhibited, and in 2023, she directed and produced her short film entitled This Is Jane, See Jane. We're going to talk to her about her work, but so much more. But first, let me welcome you, Keena, to Inwood Art Works On Air. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Aaron?
Doing pretty good. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
It's a great day to be here.
You know, it's really beautiful in the sun. In the shade, it's a little bit cold, but I can't believe it's already the beginning of November and we're still in the 50s.
I know. We're going to take it. So we're recording this in November of 2024 here for those who are keeping track. And, it's a lovely time. We could use a little more rain, but other than that, yes, we'll take the warm weather before the cold hits us for good. First question, to crawling into your world. So how did you find your way behind a camera? And I guess I'll just say lens to start with.
That's fair enough. My dad was a photographer. So ever since I was very little, we'd go on vacation around the house. He'd be taking pictures. I was very interested in the camera and how it worked. And so he basically taught me how to use it. This was back in the 70s, and I think, funnily enough, a lot of households during that time period had sort of like amateur dark rooms in the house, which my dad did. It was a makeshift setup breakdown every time you used it, but he had an enlarger, he had trays, he had film chemistry, so he taught me how to produce and develop my own black and white film and my own black and white prints.
Wow, that's pretty impressive, having your own dark room in your house, but I guess the 70s in California. I don't know.
I use that term loosely, though. I mean, honestly, it was the laundry room where you put aluminum foil over the window to block out the light.
Yeah.
But
it wasn't a dedicated dark room or anything.
It was not dedicated.
No, I understand completely. Wow. And so, so you went on, and so photography kind of was like your entry point.
Absolutely.
Storytelling and literally framing, devising.
I love that you say storytelling, because I was thinking about how to describe my work. And in the various projects that I've done, I've found that I think that's what really drives me to the medium of photography and film is storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. In your bio, I mentioned the mentors have influenced you. And how do they help you develop your voice and your style of storytelling?
That, if we were to talk specifically about a mentor, I would have to say this person is more of a collaborator of mine. His name is Johnny Delgado. I met him in the late 90s when I was working at Tower Records. And it's funny because we still remember the very day and the very instant that we met. He was a customer. He came in to buy a Boy George biography. There was no price on the book, and clearly I was frustrated because I felt like I was looking sort of foolish in front of a customer. So I said, well, we're just going to go with the Canadian price. He left. About a week later, he was hired and started working at Tower Records. And it was just that instance, sort of like, I need to know you. And he had asked me after we had worked together for a few weeks if I would photograph him, because I had mentioned in passing that I was a photographer. So we went to a park, we took photographs. At that time, he was, again, really into Boy George, but he was also into, I hope I'm not miscategorizing this because I feel like the terms have changed over the years, but he dressed in drag. And so we went to the park. In that first photo shoot that we did, it felt more rock and roll. Like, it was definitely more of a sort of like, I don't know, Cure, sort of like, again, Boy George sort of influence. But
very androgynous was the term as back in the day. I don't know how that even a word even spoken in the 2000s anymore. But there was androgynous. There was all sorts of let's just say dress up.
Dress up. So that sort of started a collaboration between us. And some of the work that I'm most proud of are images that he and I worked together on. And even though, again, some of the work was done in the 90s, I feel like for me personally, it still resonates.
Yeah, very cool, wonderful. And so, having as a transplant, having become an artist based in North Manhattan, I want to know: did photography draw you to this neighborhood? Like, what drew you to this neighborhood out of all the places in the world coming from California?
Yeah, so I graduated from SVA in 2008. And originally, when I moved to New York, I really wanted to live around the East Village, Lower East Side area. There was just this sort of
Well,
like,
street photography is amazing down there.
yeah, it just had this vibe to it. And after having lived down there for 8 years, I was basically outpriced. And I had a friend that lived up in Washington Heights, and I loved the apartment. It just felt like I can see an artist living here. Like it was spacious, the rent was affordable. So I came up really for economical reasons, but also, again, there was just something that sort of pulled me uptown.
Many of us do, though, for both those reasons.
Yeah, yeah. It just, I don't know. There was something just that just felt right. And the longer that I've been here, the more I realize that there's a lot of organizations that are here that support artists, like Inwood Art Works, like NOMA. It just feels like there's a lot of people who are up here that you can draw inspiration from, and I love that. And I love being in Inwood because it feels like a neighborhood,
Yeah.
right? You walk down the street and people know who you are and they know your name, and I just find that it's crazy this is Manhattan because you wouldn't expect that.
Yeah, like I said, I think I find the neighborhood artists like yourself very inspiring. That makes me want to live here. You know, I
Yeah.
think that's the neat thing of you, the people you run into in the hallway, or at a supermarket or the subway, and then like you're saying about your friends, like you're drawn to them, and you're going, "Oh, I see you're reading X.
Yeah.
Do you like X? Or you're all coming home on the same 10:20 train every night? Are you a Broadway musician, or like do you play out? I see the case, and you know your conversations, and you develop that rapport, and I think it's very interesting because you don't get that in a lot of places.
Definitely.
For lack of term friendliness, but I just want to say connectivity.
Yeah, well, having lived and having been raised just outside of Hollywood, I felt like what I wanted to do as an artist, I didn't feel like I could achieve that there. It was just too cliquish. It was too protective over who you knew and who you wanted to be. And I hated being in a room and the person you're speaking with is looking past you because they want to see who else is in the room that they can move on to next. The minute I arrived in New York, I didn't feel that. I felt like people are here because they want to make something of themselves. They want to achieve something. And they really, at least from my perspective, the people that I've met have been very supportive. They've never hesitated in introducing me to people that they know because we all know that collaboration is a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I just feel very lucky.
So I have to ask you the question you just kind of said. So, what do you want to accomplish as an artist?
Communication, conversation. I hope that through the work that I create, nobody feels like that they're being spoken to in the sense of I'm not trying to tell somebody anything. I'm hoping to storytell. I'm hoping to raise questions. I'm hoping to create dialogue because I feel like if we can have a conversation about important issues, then that gets us one step further to understanding another person's perspective. And I just feel like that is just so important.
Yeah, totally. I love it. Well, the thing is, opening it up, you're not pushing one way or another. You're allowing that space for that conversation to happen, right?
Absolutely.
Love it, love it. And it happens on your film project. Perfect segue to This Is Jane, See Jane. And so, in that spirit, where did the idea for the film come from?
The overturning of Roe v. Wade. I honestly didn't know how to feel. And I don't know if that sounds sort of like, how do you not know how to feel? But I just felt confused and numb and overwhelmed, and I couldn't believe that this was happening. Like, how could this happen? I just felt like there were so many questions and there were no answers and nothing made sense. And the only way I felt like I could confront what I was feeling or not feeling was to sit down and write something about it.
Awesome. That's a great answer because I think it's great how artists manifest their feelings. They put it into their work, and I think that you just people know you wrote and also directed the piece, and so wearing a lot of hats. You're definitely the driving force behind this project and getting the story told. So I'm curious, how was the production process in creating this film in order to be able to tell that story, that visceral reaction, and to have it manifest as a finished product for you?
I enjoy the process. I felt like my husband and I had a very strict timeline. We wanted to make sure that we didn't spend a lot of time worrying about a lot of nuances, if that makes sense. Like I really wanted the film to happen organically, and I didn't want to spend a lot of time doing retakes with the actors. I just wanted it to feel like a very, I hate to use the word organic again, but a very natural process. So I think what I struggled with, and I wonder if this happens with a lot of artists, is you see it in your mind so clearly, but then trying to translate what you see in your mind into what is actually realistic and what you can accomplish with the funds and the space that you have sometimes are two very different things. So it's finding that compromise that you're comfortable with. So I think for me, that was part of the challenge. But it was the first film that was my film that I made for a script that I wrote, and the first film that I directed. And I'm still very proud of it. I hope that it, again, as we had mentioned before, creates some sort of conversation. And again, it's not meant to give explanations or to make it feel like I'm expressing my point of view, because that's not really the intention. It really is, again, just to have a dialogue about where we are as women and what our future looks like.
Well, I'll say, it's in using that as a basis for, kind of like describing this film in a way I feel like you made the film you set out to make. I think that's really great. I think for a first-time filmmaker also, it's like a lot of filmmakers don't account for certain things like sound recording and or color correction and or we'll just say continuity is like the biggest offender. And there's just there's so many boxes that you cannot. You can fail, and you did a remarkable job. And the film debuted at the Inwood Film Festival this past year. Can you describe your experience and your experience, and also the reaction of the audience to the film?
Yeah, I was surprised when the credits started to roll, the opening credits, and the first scene was happening. People were laughing. And that was not at all what I had expected, because when the music begins, it's very, like, the music's really dark.
Yeah.
And in fact, my husband had wrote that music with a friend of his, and the first time he played it for me, I said, I don't like it. Not because it's not good. It just made me feel really uncomfortable because it's so heavy. And when I thought about how I wanted the film to open, I said, hey, you got to find that track for me, because I really want to use it as the opener for the opening credits. So I was a little bit surprised about people's reaction, but I will have to say, when the film ended and we exited the theater and we were in I'll call it the lounge, the lobby, the lounge area. I had someone come up to me and she was asking me some questions about the film. And she said that the film really resonated with her, that because of her own personal experience, she could relate to it. And I just felt that was the most rewarding thing to have happen, again, because it made a connection with someone.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome. Well, I was going to say, aside from this project, so what else do you have in the mix? You've made a film, you've done photography. Like, what's your focus on right now?
I have this idea for a film that's been on my mind for quite some time. I know that you and I sort of spoke about it when we ran into each other, just sort of serendipitously. But it's about a gentleman who, when you talk about a mentor, he was a mentor in a professional space, not necessarily in a creative space, but I feel like I carry him with me every moment of every day. And by the way, his wife's birthday was yesterday, so I have to give a little happy birthday to Kelly.
There you go.
Happy birthday, Kelly. But Dan is an amazing person. He is just a very I've known him for 26 years, and my experience with him was just that he's a very gentle person, but a genius. He was always about protecting songwriters' rights, about educating songwriters so they knew what they were giving up when they signed certain deals. And he was always about making sure that they got paid for what they created. I love that. And so this idea that I have for a film is, how do I tell his story? And I haven't decided, is it his story? Is it our story? I'm sort of having, I'm still trying to figure out what the entry point is, right? Like, I was speaking to someone about it the other day, and I said, well, this is sort of what I'm thinking. And they're like, no, it's too much in the weeds. It's too much about like the music industry, and people aren't, the audience won't really understand that. So I don't know. That's what I'm thinking about.
It's okay educating your audience a little bit about how things were or are, depending on your point of view and what you're trying, which part of that story you're trying to tell.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the end of the day, is, you know, you're the filmmaker. It's going through your lens. Literally, here we go again.
Yeah.
And what story you want to tell, and why, you know, why does this story need to be told, kind of thing. You know, it's like, what about this guy and what he did, that need to hear it. And I think I think it'll come out naturally, because you're the one telling us why we should know him, why and what he did. And I think, you know, the old bullet point or the outline will fill itself out eventually. But you're right, entry points are good, and you have your own style in putting things together. So we look forward to seeing how that manifests.
Thank you.
You bet. Well, Keena, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. And before we say goodbye, is there anything else to talk about, that bring up that we haven't spoken about yet? Anything on your mind?
No, I just want to say thank you for everything that you do. I feel like it's a tireless effort. I know that sometimes working with artists can feel like a thankless pursuit, but know that it's appreciated. And thank you for having me here today.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. And like I said, whatever we can do to help, let us know. I'm just, I say us like I'm the royal we or something, but it's just, yeah, everyone thinks I have this big staff. It's just basically Ken, myself, Jonathan, and a few other folks who are, you know, traipsing around in the background. We do what we can. I say we're small but mighty.
Yes.
And we do what we can. Well, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. You're my best to your husband, by the way.
I will.
And also, where can we send people to find out more about your work and maybe even see your film?
Sure. So my website is keenagonzalez.com. The film is not online yet. I'm still trying to decide how I want to promote it, how I want to distribute it. But I feel like by the time this airs in 2025, I should have a better idea.
Great. Well, check out her website to keep up with the updates, her projects. And if you want a collaborator, you got one right here as well. All right. Well, listeners, you got your marching orders there. Thanks again, Keena, for joining me.
Thank you, Aaron.
You bet. So this is Inwood Art Works On Air Artist Spotlight Edition. It's where we meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes who make their home here in Northern Manhattan. If you have a moment right now, please show us some love and rate and review this podcast 5 stars on Apple Podcast or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Many thanks to the Church of Good Shepherd here for hosting us, and to HideSites.com for uptown promotional support. You can support On Air and all of our programming making a tax-free donation at inwoodartworks.nyc /donate or via Venmo at Inwood Art Works. Be sure to follow us on social media to keep up all that we do, which includes the Inwood Film Festival, Filmworks Alfresco, pop-up art galleries, live performances, and so much more. Inwood Art Works On Air is proud to be supported in part by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council. And Inwood Art Works programming is made possible by the New York State Council on the Arts with the support of the Office of the Governor and the New York State Legislature. From the top of Manhattan and the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for tuning in. It's Aaron Sims from Inwood Art Works On Air.